Okay, guys, it's an immense pleasure to introduce Mr. Pankaj Verma, alumni of IIT Delhi, and he's currently working with IBM India as the enterprise architect for digital. He has been working with industries like telecom operators, banks, and large enterprises interested in executing new business models. And uh, incidentally, Mr. Pankaj is a very good friend to Gomati is working with Unity Solutions as VP Vice President's projects. And when I asked to Gomati ma'am about say a few personal sentences about Mr. Pankaj sir, he's an down to earth guy. Like he's very knowledgeable in all the aspects of industry, and he's up to date with all the current and emerging technologies, but he never shows it off. Down to earth guy. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, sir, and thank you for participating in this program. At 10 to 12 developer team, so they would love to listen to you.
Okay, thanks, Jia, and good noon, everybody. So today we will be discussing the latest architectural trends which are coming due to emerging technology, especially in the area of the digital technology and how they are transforming, and because of that, what kind of architectural trends which are being adopted worldwide. So moving over to slide 2 to give you a context that the global trend which we are viewing these days, the changes which are happening are exponential in nature. All sectors of the society are experiencing rapid digital transformation, whether you use Paytm, whether you go to any bank, or whether you use any e-commerce site. So everybody is now transforming the experience with the end customer. And whenever a customer is able to get some good experience from one of the organization, then it becomes sort of benchmark for other organizations. The technology is evolving at a very fast pace. Earlier, the kind of technology we were having in the web development space 5 years ago, and now what we see is entirely different. There are thinking machines, intelligent machines, which are coming in the environment, and in one sense it will be good, in other sense it will be generating some kind of a stress to all of us as human beings. What's going to happen in coming 5 years, that's a prediction, that the things, many of the things which we as human being right now doing, they will get automated through the intelligent agents. So the future will belong to those people who are working themselves in a manner which enhances their creativity potential. Because up till now, the artificial intelligence is not able to break how the human intelligence, how the human wisdom works. Rest everything they are working very aggressively. So anything which is very much specific to human wisdom, that will become much and more important. The other thing is the kind of things which are happening is uh, earlier we were having the client server kind of a architecture that got replaced, and we found the web. But in the mobile arena, we are still client server architecture conceptually, the native apps which provide a very good experience and are faster also. But practically, it's a client server, monolithic kind of environment. Now that is also getting challenged. And web is regaining that instead of having a thick client like native app, why not have thin client? So progressive web app, which is a technology developed by Google, is now becoming an important application for the web application development, especially in the area of mobile app development. Now, with this, setting up this context in mind, let's see what kind of architectural trends which are coming in. Let's go to slide number 4. There is a clear-cut trend which is happening across the industry, that applications which are having architecture, monolithic architecture, we are moving to distributed multi-core infrastructure architecture. And this basically Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Uber, they are spearheading this trend. As depicted in the slide 4, monolithic architecture is where multiple functionalities are kept in a single process. So an abstract picture is shown to you. Whereas in microservices architecture, you split those functionality into very small functionality, into very small applications. So this trend, what it allows is the positive, there are positive and negative of this. Monolithic application architecture was easy, especially for small organization and small applications. I would recommend that people should retain that architecture. But when the applications are large and there is a need to make quicker changes, and there are so many other stakeholders involved, let's say if you say the telecom environment or bank environment or insurance environment, there are so many stakeholders which are involved, and each stakeholder has its own need and pace of making changes in the application. This requires an architecture where you split the functionality into small applications. What happens is that because of this splitting of a single application into multiple applications around some business function, you can have multiple teams who can work together and collaborate together, but practically independently. So in microservices environment, you will find small teams working, but almost independent. Because in microservice concept, each application has its own user interface, has its own middleware, has its own database. The monolithic database, a large database serving the entire application, that kind of concept is not there in microservices. So there are pros and cons. One need to think through it. Going over to slide number 5, the next trend, which is practically because of the customer experience, the instant response is becoming a benchmark for all digital applications. In Facebook, if you like something, that instant acknowledgement comes to you on your handset itself. That is the kind of response which is becoming an almost a benchmark or expectation of all users. And that's how experience is getting transformed, and the underneath architecture has to undergo that kind of thing. So to make it happen, I have listed down the 9 architectural things which are happening or people are adopting these 9 areas. The list, I'm not claiming that this list is exhaustive list. There may be many other things as well, but these are the most popular architectural trends to make an application to provide instant response. The first one, which is very much popular, is the event-driven architecture. So go to slide number 6. Here, this is depiction of the event-driven architecture, where requests are coming in from portal, mobile app, yours, or any IoT device or sensor, and all those requests are being served through event-driven engine, which is typically a single-threaded system. Just go to slide number 7, which will provide you more detail and what was the traditional. Left side of the slide 7 is depicting the traditional multi-threaded architecture, where the server has a thread pool and whenever a request comes from a client, a thread gets allocated by the server to serve that request. And then the thread becomes busy or not available to serve any other request. Even when that thread is writing to some other database or file and it is taking time, so though the thread is not doing anything, but the time which is being taken to write onto database, that time is making the thread usage 0. Where on the right side, that is the event driven architecture. So the contrast is it's a single thread, but it doesn't do the work. What it does is that immediately whenever a request comes, it hands over to the OS level thread, which in turn is doing the intensive work, writing to the file system or database or talking to any other application. And that thread which was serving the request gets immediately available to serve another set of requests. One of the technology which is doing this is Node.js, which is a most popular technology platform for implementing event-driven architecture. Just to give you a appreciation for that, in a typical traditional thread pool-based server environment, one thread typically consumes 2 MB of memory. So if you have 8 GB RAM server, then you can support 4,000 concurrent requests. Whereas in case of Node.js, empirical data says that they can serve more than 100,000 requests for the same infrastructure for 8 GB machine. From 4,000 concurrent session to 100,000 concurrent sessions. That is the kind of the infrastructure advantage you come. So going to back to this slide where I started, slide number 5. So event-driven architecture. Second point we have discussed where let's say single-threaded versus multi-threaded architecture part of one organization. The another style which is getting popular along with this is a isomorphic architecture. So go to slide 8. Here what we see is in isomorphic architecture, what happens is that you have single payload format and the language or the model in which the data is getting represented is same. So for example, as the slide is depicting, the mobile app or portal is being developed in JavaScript and payload is represented in JSON format. At the server side, it is JavaScript. At the database, which is a new trend which we are finding, NoSQL database instead of traditional Oracle kind of database or DB2 kind of database. NoSQL data popular, especially in web application environment. So everywhere you have data in JSON format, from web to backend to the database. So this saves time, which earlier was getting wasted in the conversion. This is again helping in terms of providing more faster response. The fourth principle architecture style which we are finding these days very popular is the polyglot database principle. So I'm going to slide number 9. On the right hand side, polyglot principle or persistence principle says that depending upon the kind of storage of the data, you choose an appropriate database for that, rather than storing everything in relational databases like Oracle or DB2. When integrity, consistency is very, very important within split-second time frame, then relational databases are the right choice. But for keeping session data This typically we find in the shopping carts or shopping carts data. The key value stored like CouchDB, Redis, these kind of databases are much more appropriate to be used. Going back to slide 5 again, the fifth point, another point for instance responses. In server side, we have the pub sub architecture pattern has been there for a couple of years. But now that pub sub architecture pattern is coming to the front end side as well. So this is the new trend which is coming. In this particular session, I'm not describing to the pub sub architecture pattern. The trend is that it is now coming to the front end side as well. Going to slide 10 about that. So on the left side, you have client program. And whenever the client program is doing some update, which in turn is calling update method, which is going over the WebSocket and which gets published and calls the server side or backend side program. Whereas when server side changes it, the changes are published, which is depicted by eighth item which is published. The server side published their changes, and over the WebSocket as a transport layer between the client program and the backend program. That WebSocket as a transport layer provides the information to back to the client. And this kind of a architecture provides you connected client experience, which is entirely different from the traditional HTML page kind of simple web application where, let's say, any change is requires a refresh of the entire HTML page. In this kind of a pub/sub mechanism, only the data part which is changed moves from client to backend or from backend to the client. Ajax is a competing pattern to this, but Ajax is a older style, though it is better than the style where entire HTML page was getting refreshed. But in WebSocket or pub/sub over WebSocket, it is much more efficient in terms of transport layer to go for this. There are now technology platforms like Strong Loop, which is an open source platform over Node.js. It's a framework over Node.js. It provides you out-of-box capability to implement this pub/sub pattern. They call it remoting. Let me give you an analogy to explain this. In Excel sheet, if you write a formula in a cell and some other cell is referring to this cell, and if the value gets changed at the source cell, because of the linkage or the formula, the target cell gets the revised value whenever there is an update. So in strong loop, using the pub/sub pattern, they call it remoting. Any change at the backend side, immediately the same model as a reference model is available. The data model which is at server end, exactly the same model appears at the client side, at the client program. So data model or information model at both the ends is same. And the method you invoke on that data model, whether you invoke that method in the backend side or on the front end side, it gets invoked in the same manner. So those kind of technology platforms are now being available to execute this in a much more simpler manner. Going back to slide 5, the CQRS pattern, command query response segregation, and the event sourcing. These two patterns are now also contributing towards development of applications where instant response is possible. So going to slide number 11. So it is depicting on the left side on the top, there are commands like order or requests or leads which are coming from portal or mobile app. And in typical HTTP protocol, we call it as post request or delete request. This command side, all these commands are getting stored at a event store. Everything gets on a timestamp basis get stored. So Apache Kafka is one of the technology platform to act as an event store. LinkedIn is using it. LinkedIn developed it and later on donated it to Apache as an open source platform. And whenever there is a query side, the query is taking the data from the database which is inside that microservice. So on the PPT, I have depicted microservice data store as a different box, but practically the microservice, inside of the microservice, you have the data store. It has its own data store. And that event store, whenever new event is or request is coming, that event store updates this database. That's an update message. Or so CQRS and event sourcing use the pub/sub method design pattern to do this. Now, what is the advantage of this pattern is because now query is segregated from the load of the commands. For example, in e-commerce scenarios where you will find that people surf more, they buy very less. Only less than 1% people buy. Means actual order is very less, command is very less. Whereas query load is huge. People are surfing product catalog and various options. What can happen is in traditional style, when query load and the command load is served by a same server, the query load can bog down the command, which is the real revenue generating function for the organization. So these two are kept separated so that query load do not bog down the main revenue generating function of the organization. So that is why there is a command query responsibilities segregation. Going back to slide 5, there are things like 7th point, ahead of time compilation. This is like improving the response time, or let's say the mobile app uptime, let's say how soon it comes up. So the binaries which travel from the server side to the client side or to the browser end. In traditional technologies, there's a lot of compilation happens at runtime at the browser side. Whereas with coming of Angular 2 kind of framework, the compiled version is there. There is no runtime compilation which is happening at the browser end. It saves time. Similarly, ability of lazy loading in Angular kind of platform. So only when you are hitting that particular resource, web resource, then it gets loaded, rather than everything taken together gets uploaded, which increases the transport time. The ninth point is that CPU clock speed is now not increasing. Probably as per the physics, the threshold is reached. So multi-core is the hope for having a better response. So that your application now starts on multi-core. But if you see your traditional programming languages like C, C++, they are traditionally designed to work on single core. So they can work on multi-core, but it depends upon the programmer or the architect. But here, functional programming style instead of the procedural programming style, that is, it's a trend that because functional programming style is important, and I'm not going into detail of what is functional programming style. But the crux point to take away from this is that it allows to provide out-of-box capabilities as a language by which application development for multi-core environment is far more and very few risks, which otherwise is achievable in C, but it is built out in Java, but it is relatively difficult. That is why functional programming style is getting so popular. Java has come up with Java 8 version and Java 9, which is supports the functional programming style. Haskell is pure functional programming library. Angular 2 is now supporting TypeScript as a language which supports the functional programming. TypeScript is developed by the person who has developed the C++ language. What he has done is he has enhanced JavaScript to provide object-oriented and functional programming capabilities in JavaScript. So now coming over to next set of discussion, how much time, Jaya, I have right?
Sir, you can take some 10 to 15 minutes more.
Okay. So going over to slide 12, this is another trend where applications want to leverage more and more of the web browser capability. Up till now, the web browsers were not that capable, but nowadays web browsers are providing huge capability in terms of handling flaky network conditions, flaky required latency also. Many of the browsers have supporting HTTP 2, which is very good for reducing the round time. Web communication capability due to WebRTC kind of communication protocol. Till now, web pages are used to render and but they cannot initiate a communication call from inside the web page. There are now browsers which support WebRTC. Opera is one of them. So what happens is that a communication call, video call, voice call, messaging from inside a web page. And then you can develop very which are very engaging. Progressive web app is something user is not required to download from the app store, but like a native app. So there are certain constraints at this point of time to access the hardware of the device. But there are many things which are very good. For example, Flipkart adopted progressive. So this is useful when you want to launch picture changes. And there is no app store involved in that. Business wants a change, it immediately gets reflected. So there is no app store in between. And the users need not download 10-15 MB file from the app store. Going over to slide number 13, which is saying that this is another trend. Up till now, we are familiar with Agile Project Management. But that's a concept more for project managers. Now the trend is how to survive agility in the architecture itself or in the technical work, the way we work as developers. So the pipeline of automating the distribution of the applications. So those automations are now coming up. There are tools available to do that. Microservices are containerized using technology like Docker, which allows you to, within sub-second time frame, you can spawn a new Docker with a microservice inside there. So these kind of, let's say, technologies are now enabling that agility is getting embedded into the way the developers are developing the applications, the way architecture is getting developed. Going over to next slide, 14th. This is a traditional pattern where the front end and the back end are together. Slide 15 is saying that it's a headless architecture style where front end can be in any technology and the back end is merely providing the data. Data format could be Avro, data format could be JSON. So only data is traveling. And this trend came with IoT applications. IoT sensors do not send the entire HTML, they don't generate a HTML page and then send it to the server side. They send only small data. So the same concept now started coming in the web applications domain itself. Drupal is supporting this kind of a headless architecture nowadays very much. Slide 16 is talking the trends which we are finding in the UI side, which I have already discussed. 17th slide, I have already discussed that earlier the server was sending the entire HTML page, so server was busy in computing those, whereas now the servers are sending small, lightweight JSON. So that's how servers are getting more lean and they are focused. So front end is decoupled from the back end using this stage. So this allows you to make decisions in front end without having dependency on the backend changes. So this decoupling of the changes at the front end and backend is done due to this headless architecture style. Last slide, which is the linked data. So Tim, who is the inventor of the web, he has suggested now the web should move to newer way of sharing the information. So in this particular session, I'm not going into detail of this. I'm just giving you this overview that there is a linked data technology and the concept which is coming up, whereby sharing of the information across multiple organizations becomes a standard-based sharing. So with this, I'm done. I can take few questions if you have.
Yeah, anybody does have any question?
Yeah. Hi, this is Anish.
Hi, Sanish.
How is the PWS works? Will we get notifications as like the native apps? I mean,
Yes. Progressive web app designed, architected by Google, and technology platform to do this is Angular 2. There are other technologies also, but Angular 2 promoted by Google for this purpose. They have a architectural component called service worker, which works behind the scene and provides this native app like notification even when the user is not using it, and that is why they are calling that. So technically, it's a web app, but it's a lost some notification capability due to service worker. So if you Google and search for service worker, you will get more details on how it is implemented. And they have given sample source code to implement service worker and the notification capability.
Okay.
Any more questions? Yeah, please.
So this is Dinesh.
Hi, Dinesh.
I have a question related to how are we going to deal with the whole architecture? I mean, now we are trying to figure out a way to keep everything in the UI, and then just the data will be sent from the server, right? In any format, let it be JSON. But if that's the case, can the whole UI be mimicked by someone else? I mean, like I'm talking about the security question here. Will there be more copycats? I mean, let's say you have an application which just from the server side, we just pull the JSON data and then display it on the client side in a various format. Okay, so everything resides in the front end. So if that's the case, for example, if I am creating an application like PowerPoint, only the data is going to be fetched from the server. So can the whole application can be mimicked by someone else? I mean,
Okay.
Can be copied.
Okay. Yes. Yes. This technology platform. What they are doing is there are multi-level security capabilities that need to be brought in. One is related to the binaries identification that is coming from the right source or not. For example, Walklight, which is a mobile app development platform, that has very strong algorithms built in to detect whether this binary is coming from the right binary or not. Then there is at application level, there is a new security mechanism which is coming up to address many of such issues, especially related to authorization or the permissions scope of the user, what they can do. Especially it becomes important when only the data is traveling and microservices concept is coming up. Have you heard about JWT, JSON Web Token?
Yeah.
So clubbed with the binaries authentication with the new HTTPS2 and the JWT taken together, these mechanisms are going to help us to do that, to ensure that security.
No,
Apart from
what
what
I'm trying to question here is, will there be any sort of binary-based things in the front end? I mean, instead of just like plain old JavaScript or Angular-based scripting, will there be something like deployment-based things where we'll end up having binary that cannot be copied? I mean,
no, I have not understood your question. It means binary that cannot be copied.
I mean, okay, let's say you have an exe file, right? So exes are basically compiled or interpreted into a binary format, so you cannot copy the core or anything. So once you have it as a exe, so the same thing, will that be extended to web? I mean,
yes, there are algorithms available to protect that, but specific algorithms name I need to get back to you, but there are mechanisms now available.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are, but right now I'm not aware of that, but there are. So I need to get back to you on that specific algorithms.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, sir, thank you so much. I think we have a wonderful session. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks.
Have a good day, sir. Bye.
Bye.